Hey, it's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
He is back, and we are pumped about it. Rabbi Kevin Solomon here. Rabbi, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. You guys?
We're doing well.
Great. Hey, Christmas is next week already. That's crazy and hard to believe.
Yeah, I better start buying presents, I guess, for it.
You might want to go to the Walmart and find something for Donna.
I think CVS is open until midnight on
You're right.
the 24th. No, I don't do that, I promise. This year, anyway.
Pair of socks.
Yeah, there you go. Rabbi, so we're so excited. We had a chance to talk to you, I think it was, a month or two ago, and I thought, this guy's amazing. Even though he was in radio at one time, I'm glad he's not
now.
Still
amazing.
Yeah. But I'm so glad
on radio.
Yeah, I think you do very, very well, and we'd love to talk to you just throughout the course, the end of this year, next year, if you'd be willing. But I wanted to talk to you about Hanukkah, and we're right on Hanukkah. Are we celebrating Hanukkah right now, or is it coming up?
We're right in the middle of it, right smack dab in the middle.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Hanukkah, but first, tell us about some traditions you and your family do for the holidays.
Wow. Well, it's so interesting because Hanukkah is so special, and one of the things I love about Hanukkah, and especially sharing with your audience, because a lot of Christians really don't know much about Hanukkah. They look at it almost without as much an education about it. They look at it as almost like is it a Jewish Christmas? What exactly is it?
Yeah.
But but it relates. It actually does relate, in as much as the timing of Hanukkah was in the intertestamental period between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant being written, and like my old friend Professor Paul Lapidus of Kennesaw State University wrote in an article, if there hadn't have been Hanukkah, there may not have been Christmas, because Hanukkah was the story about how the Jewish people survived under great oppression and fought back to keep their faith and religion. And this was only 150, 160 years before the time of the Messiah. And so for the Messiah to have been born in Bethlehem, just as everything was prophesied, you really needed Hanukkah to have taken place successfully with the Maccabees in order for the Jewish people to retain possession of the land of Israel so that the Messiah could be born. So it relates very much. And to answer your question directly, our family there's lots of wonderful and sweet traditions during the holiday season and Hanukkah time, such as the lighting of the Chanukiah, or the Hanukkah menorah. That's the menorah with 8 branches, in addition to the shamash, the servant candle that lights all the rest of them. Then, when our kids were young, there's the gelt, which is a type of chocolate coin, and the dreidel, and singing of Hanukkah songs and such. And it's also called the Festival of Lights. So we decorate our houses with lights and stuff, and so it's a beautiful, beautiful tradition.
Wow. I just had a question in my mind and it just completely went out. Rick, you know how that goes, right?
That's usually me. We're talking with Rabbi Kevin Solomon. You want me to go ahead, and then you can?
Yeah, go ahead. I just went
about yours.
There.
We'll talk a little bit about, because I find this fascinating, about the Maccabees, and there is a story about the oil not running out. And Hanukkah means what? Dedication,
Correct.
Lights. So talk a little bit about that. I mean, I find that I love when God does stuff like that. It's just ultra cool. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Rick, appreciate that. It's very interesting because the story of the oil is of great lore and is a beautiful thing. It's interesting because I'll say up front that there's some debate about it, in as much as the timing of when the story came out was a few hundred years after it happened. Some people say, "Oh, it didn't happen," or "It did happen," but most experts think yes, it actually did happen as it is written. And the story goes is that when Judah Maccabee and his band of brothers, literally these were priests, like as in Levitical priests, and as Antiochus Epiphanes, the king of the Seleucid Empire at the time, the Syrian Greeks, descendants of the empire of Alexander the Great, as they had control of Judea, Israel. They were oppressing the Jewish people, and then eventually they came hardcore against the religious Jews who were trying to follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And there was a lot of pressure to accept the Greek way of life. And so Antiochus came in, and he desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. He sacrificed a pig on the altar, which, if you know anything about Judaism, that ain't kosher, boys.
No.
Yeah.
and then he put a statue of Zeus in the temple. He prohibited circumcision. He said study of Torah would be punishable by death. Study of the Bible would be punishable by death. And so all that was obviously antithetical to the Jewish people's faith, to say the least. And so they rose up and in a guerrilla warfare kind of revolt against this massive army, the Greek Syrian Empire at that time, and they were able to win the battle. It was miraculous story after story of the battle itself. But then eventually it came time for the temple to be rededicated. It's one of the reasons why it's called the Feast of Dedication. As a side note, of course, it's in the New Covenant as well. We read where it says that it speaks about the Feast of Dedication. And so Hanukkah is in the scriptures also in the New Covenant. But anyway, so it was time to rededicate the temple because it had been so desecrated. And of course we read in the scriptures how the menorah, the regular menorah, should be lit in the temple. And the way that's lit was with this ritually pure oil. And they could only find enough of this oil to last for one day. And they said, well, let's go ahead and light it again. We're rededicating the temple. We got to get the menorah lit. And when they lit it, it would take 8 days for more oil to be produced. And so they said, let's go ahead and light it, even though it lasts only one day. And it ended up lasting 8 days, which was a great miracle, and just considered an affirmation of what they were doing to restore God's name, to restore the temple, etc. And then they were able to get more oil. And so that's a beautiful story that really focuses on the central part of the story, which is the victory over oppression, the victory of God's people against the enemy, and the rededication of the temple, which is why Hanukkah is called the Feast of Dedication.
Wow. Talking to Rabbi Kevin Solomon of Congregation Beth Hallel. Now, as a Messianic Jewish congregation, do you celebrate Christmas and Hanukkah, or just Hanukkah, or how does that work for those of us who honestly don't know and are curious?
Great question, Dan. Well, our congregation by birth is about 50% Jewish by birth and about 50% non-Jewish by birth. So it's a very diverse congregation. We have, of course, Jewish people who've come to faith in Messiah Yeshua and who are retaining their Jewish identity. And then we have non-Jewish people who have a calling like Ruth, who said, your people shall be my people, and who feel called to the Jewish people and who feel called to the roots of the faith, which we all know has that Jewish roots, as we read about in the book of Romans.
Right.
And so our congregation is very diverse in terms of its practices and celebration. One of the things that our goal is that we're shining the light of Messiah to our Jewish brothers and sisters. And so probably the majority of the congregation have historically grown up more with Hanukkah. But that's not to say that some of our members don't celebrate Christmas. And that's also not to say that we don't like, there's some people out there who talk about, pagan and the paganism and listen, I'm not talking about all the commercialism and stuff, but to me, I love my Christian brothers and sisters celebrating the birth of the Messiah. I mean, what a great thing. There's almost nothing greater. Maybe there is nothing greater that happened in the world than the Messiah coming, of course, and his birth, and his death and resurrection, probably maybe just a little bit more. But the point is that couldn't have happened without his birth.
Right.
And so we celebrate with our Christian brothers and sisters and enjoy that.
Awesome.
Rabbi Kevin Solomon, he is a part of Beth Hallel, and we appreciate his time talking about Hanukkah. Just talk a little bit about how Hanukkah talks about and relates to us today with the Messiah, if you will.
Yeah, very much. I mean, because when you consider, oh gosh, there's on two different levels. I go back historically to the fact that, in the Hanukkah time was around, let's say 160, 170 years before Messiah. And the Hasmonean Empire, which started with the Maccabees, lasted around 100 years up until Herod the Great and the Romans came in, if you will. And of course, we're familiar with them within scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
But what you saw in the story of Hanukkah was this battle. In fact, understanding Hanukkah helps you understand some of the dynamic and some of the things that are talked about in the New Covenant that we read that perhaps are not understood by most people and kind of passed over. And then when we read the scriptures, we'll read about so and so, the zealot, or the Hellenistic Jews, and we read about that, and most people don't even understand what that means. But really, understanding Hanukkah helps you understand what exactly happened with the Jewish people and their acceptance or rejection of Yeshua, Jesus, as the Messiah. Because during Hanukkah, the whole dynamic was you had the religious Jews who were called the Zealots, the people who wanted to bring in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob back into Jewish life, and then you had the Hellenistic Jews. The Hellenistic Jews were the Jews that were more or less assimilated into Greek life, who were worshiping some of the Greek gods, who were kind of high and mighty and like, well, I'm Greek now, and I understand the world and culture, and I'm very developed. And we see this a lot in the world today. People who think they have it all figured out, and their intellectualism surpasses and supersedes their faith walk and their spiritual side.
Right.
And so we have this conflict that's going on between them. And then, of course, we know that the Jewish people were able to rise up, these zealots, to regain the land of Israel and follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Well, this conflict was still going on during the time of Messiah. And so we see that what was happening is by then, Rome had taken over instead of the Greeks during the time of Hanukkah. It was Rome now that was oppressing the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And so just like in the time of the Maccabees, the Jewish people were revolting, and they were coming up, and the Great Revolt was only going to happen in the 60s, as in like the 60s, a few years after Jesus. And why were they trying to rise up? Because they were trying to get rid of the Roman oppression in this time. So we read in scriptures about the zealots that's what they were trying to do. And then there were the Essenes, who were the kind of the pacifists down in the desert. And then you had a lot of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, who were really connected and under Roman boot. But what the Jewish people were looking for is they were looking for the Messiah to come. But the Messiah that they were looking for was somebody like a Judah Maccabee. They were looking for somebody, as the scriptures prophesied, who was going to save Israel, bring back the kingdom of God, and throw out the evil oppressors of the Jewish people. And so here comes Yeshua, Jesus, into the picture, and understanding Hanukkah helps you understand all this. They all knew the story of Hanukkah well. It's in the New Covenant. And they were looking for the Messiah to come and to throw off Rome, and they were ready. And Peter had his sword ready, right? Mm-hmm. And then Yeshua, Jesus said, no, this is not the purpose of my coming the first time here. I'll be coming again when I'm coming on the horse with the army and taking care of business. But now,
is that what translation is that?
I learned it in rabbinic school, y'all. Come on. But for now, Jesus said, I'm coming for inner peace, not the external peace. But the Jewish people who were under that Roman oppression at the time said, no, this is not who the Messiah is supposed to be. We read about the Messiah is supposed to conquer and reign. And we need that. We need salvation from Rome. And so that's why there was this, by and large, rejection of Yeshua as the Messiah.
Wow. So good.
We're getting school here today with Rabbi Kevin Solomon. Love it. Now, now that we've got kind of more of an understanding of Hanukkah, let's talk some fun. What do you and your family do every year for Hanukkah? What traditions do you like to do? What do you like to eat? What's the party? We want to hear about that.
Well, your question is also not only timely but accurate, because with Jewish people, oftentimes our holidays all seem to have one theme. It's something that's traditionally that's said about Jewish holidays. They all have the same theme. They tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. I mean, you look at Purim, you look at Passover, you look at Hanukkah. It's all the same story. They tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. And so Hanukkah, of all the Jewish holidays, that and Purim probably are just the most celebratory and rejoicing. And a couple of the different foods we eat. One is a food called latkes. They're these potato pancakes that you may have seen in Jewish delis that you've been to. And why latkes? Latkes, these potato pancakes, is because they're fried in oil. It's meant to remind us of the oil that lasted in the temple for the 8 days, right? Yeah. And those are always good. Also, something called sufganiyot. Sufganiyot is a donut also that's intended to convey the sweetness of the holiday and of the victory. Those are two of the classic dishes, if you will, of Hanukkah, in addition to Hanukkah gelt itself, which is this kind of gold embossed chocolate coins. And the gelt and the dreidel. The dreidel is the little spinny top, that you see oftentimes when people talk about Hanukkah. And that comes from the tradition of the fact that when the Jewish people were under oppression by Antiochus and they were not allowed to study the Torah, what they would do is when they would be studying the Torah, they were all together studying the Torah, and then when they heard that the Syrian troops might be in the area, they would put away their scriptural materials, and they'd pull out this dreidel, which is just kind of a fun game, if you will, and they have coins that they use in the game, and they would and then if somebody came in, they'd be, oh, we're just playing a game here, and so it represented that which would save the Jewish people, and it showed the determination to continue to study the Word of God. And so between the chocolate gelt, the sufganiyot, which are these donuts, and the latkes, those are some of the traditional foods that we always enjoy during Hanukkah.
I'm hungry now, Rabbi.
Yeah.
So
thanks. We need to take care of the food business.
Yes, we do.
Rabbi Kevin Solomon, always a delight. We got to take a break here in just a few. Let's look ahead. We've all had a challenging 2020. I think we've learned a few things. Look ahead to 2021. What do you expect? What are you looking forward to?
Well, gosh, probably like everybody else in the country, man, I'm looking forward to being past this pandemic. It's been such a challenge, listen, all of your listeners. I really want to encourage you. Encourage and support your pastors. I can't tell you enough how hard it is right now to be a clergy and to lead a congregation, or in my case, a rabbi. It's really hard because inevitably, and you guys have seen this, and everybody who's listening right now has seen this, is that there's such a diversity of opinions about everything. With our Jewish people, there's an old saying, and rabbis know this, because if you have two Jewish people, there's three opinions. We're an opinionated people. The old story goes, they found these two Jewish guys on a deserted island, and they had built 3 synagogues. How's that even possible? Well, because we think one way, as it says in Fiddler on the Roof, on the one hand, but on the other hand. and so everybody's got different opinions, and it's impossible for your pastor to make everybody happy. And I want to encourage everybody listening, is that your pastor may be doing something that you say, well, I see it a different way. Listen, there doesn't have to be, and I told our congregation, there doesn't have to be unanimity, but man, there should be unity. So support your pastor and your church, your congregation, even if you're not exactly on the same page as to exactly what they're doing with everything. We're going to be coming out of this, and when we come out of this, there needs to be strength in the body of Messiah and unity in the body. And the adversary would like to use the pandemic to divide us and to cause divisiveness. And we really have to be on guard for that. So I'm looking forward to the pandemic being in the rearview mirror, please God.
Yes.
Thanking the Lord for the silver linings he gave us in the midst of it, but looking forward to what's ahead.
Rabbi,
I'm sorry, can you do that voice again from Fiddler on the Roof?
On the one hand, but on the other hand.
Yeah.
Rabbi Kevin Solomon, he will be doing stand-up after the first year, as well as his other duties and those things that he's passionate about. You're very, very funny. We enjoy having you here.
And very informative, too.
Yeah.
Thank you for the lesson we got today. It was great.
Thank you for breaking it down for a couple of washed-up old radio talk show hosts as well. Hey, check out Beth Hillel. It's bethhillel.org. You can watch them on YouTube. And we're looking forward to more of Rabbi Kevin in 2021 if his family and congregation doesn't talk him out of it. Anyway, listen, we love you and we appreciate your time. Blessings to your precious family and also to your congregation.
Thank you so much, Rick and Dan. It's a real honor.
We appreciate you, man.
Yep. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.